So, hello, part two of Boilie Tactics. In the first clip, part one, I talked about the importance of nutritional bait for long-term use and how important getting the recipe right is. So this is whether you are making your own bait at home or whether you're buying my base mixes or somebody else's, and a combination of all those things, flavours, additives, everything. And DIY bait making offers unbelievable permutations. In fact, I've made something here about being different, which I'll actually show to the camera. William's behind the camera. Can you see that fairly clearly, Wills?
Nah, bring it closer.
Bring it closer. Can you see that clearly?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leave it there for a few seconds so that people can see what's written on it. Okay, so what's written on it is that only DIY boilies you make yourself, it might be from somebody else's ingredients or it might be from your own, offer these 7 levels of versatility. So you've got size, you can vary the size, you can use several different sizes at the same time. Shape, texture, you can add your own seeds, you can add your own crunchy ingredients. Colour, not quite so important, but you can change the colour with organic materials if you wish, such as beetroot powder if you want it a bit red, spirulina if you want it a bit green. There's all sorts of things you can use in a boilie, but it doesn't have to be bright pink, bright white, nothing like that. Dyes are useful, not vital. Smell, obviously, that's an infinite subject, and smell comes with taste, so taste and smell are important, but the taste is also very relevant within the ingredients of the mix itself. And the final one is nutritional content. And you would have seen the little question at the bottom. Here it is. Which one is the most important out of those 7? Number 7. The nutritional value of the bait, without doubt, is the most important aspect of long-term boilie use. And bait companies that really know their stuff, and there's a few good ones out there, you ask them that question and they will put that at the very top of their priority list. The quality of the ingredients and the design of the base mix that goes in to make good boilies is imperative. You'll catch on something that is less beneficial, but you'll catch more and for longer if you use good quality bait. And I will be saying that until my dying day. So, important and serious. I'll just put my notes to one side for a moment, because what I want to do now is to go straight in to baiting patterns with boilies. This is something that is incredibly important, and as I'm talking you will hear my voice in the background and 3 pictures will come up on your screen. Picture number 1 is an open and random baiting pattern where the boilies are spread up to 50 yards in front of you. This is providing you haven't got anybody to the left or to the right of you or opposite you where it's going to spoil their fishing by using this open pattern, which is best achieved using a throwing stick or a catapult. And you can do this at almost any range by doctoring the mix and making the boilies hard if you want to get them at long range, and use smaller baits if you want to put them out with a catapult at closer range. This is not to be used for spod presentations, using spods to put piles of bait in a scattered area. This is for single baits in a given area. And then you're going to be fishing pretty much on clear spots or casting for what we call a donk, a clear bump on the edge of the lead, and you're feeling the bait down as you cast out. So this scattered pattern is my favourite. And the reason I think it's successful is because you're attracting fish in this big wide open area of scattered boilies from a big area of the lake. And as they're passing through it, they find a bait here or a bait there. There's not a big pile of bait, so there isn't a huge signal of smell. That's important, because when you then switch to the tighter baiting pattern, which you will see on the next picture. So this picture is a edge of the baited area presentation, and it's on the edge of the baited area that I like to cast rather than in the middle of it. And I'll tell you why that is. About 40 years ago, I was fishing a syndicate, and people would throw in, their boilies into an area and then climb a tree and watch the reaction of the fish to their bait, which was lying in their baited lines, which was at the bottom of the tree in a stalking rod, or however it was presented. And basically they were looking to see how the carp would react. And what very often happens is the fish move around the outside of the baited area, picking off one or two baits that are on the outside of the bait pattern, but they're too frightened to go right across the baited area where your bait is. So if you put a bait on the edge of the baiting pattern, you stand a greater likelihood of A, not frightening the fish, and B, getting an early bite. So think about that as a tactical approach. It works, and it doesn't frighten the fish quite so much. So try that. I'll let that just sink in a bit whilst you look at the picture, and then we'll go on to picture number 3, which is small lake presentation. Lots of us will be fishing small lakes. It also applies on medium-sized lakes, and it could even apply, if conditions are right, on bigger lakes. But let's say it's small lake presentation for the time being. So you're fishing a small water, there's pretty much anglers all the way round. You're there for a day, a night, or a couple of nights, whatever it's going to be. What are you going to do? If there's an island in there, whatever you do, don't cast to the island. Why? Because everyone else does. But what they don't tend to do is to fish, let's say it's 2 rods, one at 9 o'clock to where they're fishing at right angles up the bank, and the other rod at 3 o'clock. So you've got your rods in the water, as you can see in the picture, with the lines sharp left and right, but very close in. So probably only 2 or 3 rod lengths out from the bank, as close to the bank as you can get it. And then you can also throw in 1 or 2 crumpled up boilies, or 1 or 2 boilies over it, dead accurate, once every half an hour or so. So you're placing your bait, and very often in these lakes, the fish think it's a free offering thrown in the edge. And this tactic is often used by match anglers to fish what's called the inside line. So try this, go fishing, and don't cast out. Lower your bait in the margins and pay the line back to where you're fishing. So that covers those points. You can go back to the video and look at those pictures again, and I hope it helps. So we're now back filming live again. You've heard me droning on about all sorts of different tactics, and now we're going to have a little return to that winter tactic of using a float. Those of you that looked at the first clip may remember that I spoke about using either fluorocarbon or standard monofilament and using a float. So all I've done is I've tied a hook on, and I've slid 2 float caps up the line. Hopefully you can see that. Wills, can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to get my float in position, I'm going to use a pair of forceps. These ones have got a curved end. I'm very carefully, I'll do it the other way round, John. There we go. So I'm using the forceps to open out. That one's broken, which always happens in the best programs, doesn't it? So you get the idea that you use the forceps to open up the float cap and slide it over. My finger's stuck in the forceps. Okay, so you can either attach the float by 1 rubber or 2, if it's a bit snaggy and the fish are amongst the reeds, I prefer to use 2 rubbers. This one broke, but you get the idea. I'm not going to fiddle about putting another one on. And that's your rig. So there's no hair rig. And I'll come back to this in a second, because my preferred tactic for this could be a boilie. And here's a boilie. How are you going to hook it? The old-fashioned way. Can you see this in front of the camera wheels?
Yeah.
There we go. How about that? Just side hooked. If you want to put a really short hair on there and have the boilie off the back of the shank, fine. But in a minute, we're going to be putting paste on there. I'll knock up some paste in a second. That's a really cracking little tactic. And if you want to just take 5 seconds and talk about making paste, let's make some now. Might as well. I've got a few bits prepared here. We're using Taste. Brilliant barbel bait. My go-to barbel bait is Taste with any combination of flavour. One of my favourites would be ala salar and the chicken tikka. But I'm not going to talk too much about flavours because you've heard me drone on about that before. So we'll use, bearing in mind this is paste we're making here. I'll just do it quick. Well, I'm going to just show you a little trick which has a relevance for paste and boilies. Here we go. Bit of a mug, a bit like me, I'm a bit of a mug. Crack the egg in the bowl, in the container. We're going to use all this egg in here to make the paste, including the yolk. But there's a little trick you can do if you want to make extra hard boilie hook baits. It involves this thing, which is an egg yolk separator. You can do it by hand. And what you do is, if you can see this clearly, you tip the egg into there and it separates, you can see it all glooping out, separates the yolk from the white. There it goes. It's all in. You can just pass me a fork there, Wills. There's one just on the right. Thank you very much. I've got deja vu on that. We've done that before, haven't we? So you can weigh out the, you don't need to weigh out the base mix, sorry, for paste, you just keep adding it. So you can measure that if you want, and you can measure how much that is so that you end up back with the same volume of liquid egg that you would normally be using had you included the yolk. And do you know what? Just for a bit of fun, let's do that now. This is a 60ml beaker, which I supply in my measuring kits. We'll tip the egg white element into there. Quite surprising, it's about 25ml. If we now include the egg yolk, bearing in mind there's a little bit wasted in the container and on here, that goes up to 45ml. So if you only wanted to use egg white in order to get extra hard hook baits, just make, to get the same 1 egg dose rate on my dose rate table, which is dead accurate, or for your own dose rates using your own special little flavour blends that you're using, just make sure that you get around about 45-50ml of liquid approximately, because it depends on the size of the egg, and then you can revert back for hook baits only to the right dose rates. I'm sure you get the message. Try it, it works. I'll tip that in and we'll just have a break for a second whilst I knock this paste up, because you don't want to see me making paste, it's easy. Okay, so I've made the paste. Here it is. Nice bit of taste paste. This is quite a smooth textured paste, but if you want it even smoother, or if you're using one of my dedicated hook bait mixes, which has been sieved, this is the grade of sieve, it's about 1.5 mil, so it's not a super fine flour one. You can sieve the base mix and then you get an even finer paste. So I mentioned earlier about using an unusual rig in the winter. I've sort of not finished that part of it, so I'm pulling a little bit of paste off here. No hair rig. Here's the float rig I used earlier on, and just for the purposes of the explanation, I side hooked a boilie. There's a side hook boilie there. There it is. So we'll take that off. You're out fishing, you've put the rig in this way, just a simple float, no weight, no nothing. You can attach the float by 2 rubbers if you want. There's fish moving about in the reeds or the weed. This could be winter or summer. You put the paste on, here we go. I don't really need to tell anybody how to put a bit of paste on. I tend to use it with just a tiny little bit of the hook protruding like that. You don't want the paste too stiff, but that's absolutely fine. Talking about stiff paste in the winter, just to 1 egg you can add 5 ml of sunflower oil or soya oil to 1 egg, and it keeps the paste softer in very cold weather. The fish can also digest vegetable oil better in the winter than they can salmon oil. In the summer you can use a salmon oil if you wish. So let's go back to this winter tactic rig and where to fish in the lake. Doesn't matter what depth the water is particularly, but the fish, if you can see them, are probably moving no more than 4 or 5 foot deep, and in some cases they'll be moving very shallow. They'll be moving a couple of foot deep in amongst the reeds, and you can often see the reed stems knocking as the fish move through them. So you've got a pair of chesties on, or you can get into a position where you can cast this rig on a float in amongst the reeds. It won't tangle. You can cast this bit of paste if you just cover up the hook point a little bit more. So let's say you cover it up like that. So there's no protruding hook. The rig can't tangle. You know what? You can cast that in the middle of a weed bed, right in the middle of the weed bed. The float sits on the top, and as soon as it moves quickly across the surface, that fish has got it in the mouth, and you have to strike. And so those of you who are used to not striking because you're using a hair rig will enjoy this type of fishing 10 times more than you will ever do just sitting behind the rods and waiting for the fish to hook themselves. That is a great rig. You can do, of course, the opposite way round and just use a pop-up, popped up off the length of the standard bottom rig using a mono or fluoro hook link. And that's obviously a great rig. It's what I call a safe zig rig. So it's a pop-up rig, winter or summer again, just the length of the hook link. Talking about lengths of hook links, here's my rig box. I think this cost about $2.99 in Hobbycraft. It's a plastic box. I don't like most of the boxes that are on the market for rigs because they're too short, and I like to use long rigs. So I brought it to show you guys. I've lined the box with it's a ether foam that you can buy online, or you can get it from a fly tying shop. You can get it online. I've cut it to the exact shape of the box, which is quite long. I haven't got a tape measure handy, but that's about 12 inches. And you can see that some of my rigs are 10-12 inches long. When fishing big boilies, and look at the length of the hair, quite long hairs, look. Here we go. Much too much complication is put on rigs. It's a rig. They either take it or they don't. I love saying things like this because there's going to be loads of people up and down the country who have invented this rig and that rig and the blowback rig and the so-and-so rig and all the rest of it. They all work, But do they work because of the rig or in spite of the rig? Just recently I was speaking to one of the people who invented the hair rig. I haven't spoken to him for 40 years. I won't say his name. It's not Kevin Maddox. We were talking about the rig, and the exact words that this particular person used was, yeah, it's quite good actually, because most people don't know how to use the hair rig properly. I love that. That's just such a great statement. But you know what? It's true. And I said that this would be a multifaceted couple of clips, but I have to justify what I've just said. I can't just make sweeping statements without justifying them. So I'll go on to say something about rigs. The most important thing, in my opinion, about rigs, and you can use this, guys, everybody, think about this and use it in your own way. You can either embrace the hype of rigs, or you can think about this. When the fish are feeding on boilies, this is on boilies, and the hair rig was invented first of all to use boilies. The bigger fish will come over the bait. Here's some boilies lying here, and they won't need much suction, if it's a big fish, to suck that bait off the bottom. If you've got a short rig, you very often get false bites, no bite, or you hook the fish on ejection on the edge of the lip, which very often means you lose them halfway through the battle, halfway through the fight. If you use a longer rig with a longer hair, it gives those big fish in particular more play to pick up the boilie, take it back into their mouth. It's not too heavily flavoured. They want to eat the bait because you've thought about the base mix. You've got a reliable and trusted bait supplier, whoever that may be. Bang! You've got a good hook hold and you've caught the fish right inside the mouth. They very rarely drop off. Longer hair, more play, longer link, it works with boilies, with open baiting patterns. Try it. So I thought I'd show you that, and you can use a sieve, don't forget, if you're using standard base mix, so straight out the bag, use a sieve if you want a fine powder, or if you're making pop-ups using cork granules or cork balls. Sieve the mix, make it fine. Add a hook bait hardener, whatever your choice of hook bait hardener is. So we've covered a lot of points here. I will repeat again that if you are using my flavours or your own or essential oils or whatever that may be, have a little look at this. It's a PDF on my website. It's a dose rate chart. I'm the only bait company in Europe, as far as I know, that has gone to the trouble of producing this dose rate chart. It's not tablets of stone, but it's pretty accurate. It's not going to apply to everybody's flavours because my flavours are very, very strong, so you don't need much in the bait. I'm just checking my notes to see if there's anything else. Oh yes, there is something else. One thing I haven't mentioned, because I'm not a great advocate of it, but I do occasionally use it in winter and in summer, and that's a glug or a glaze over the boilies. The reason that I don't like to use glugs and glazes over boilies and loads of liquid foods and all the rest of it over them is because everybody else does. But that doesn't mean to say that it doesn't work. Of course it works, particularly if you're using natural products like this shrimp. And there's a good winter one, which is also a cracking additive for barbel fishing. And I'll show you what it's like. It's liquid yeast. And in fact, William, can you just pass me a Spectrum milk and cream from up there? There should be a Spectrum up there in a screw top jar. Yeah, there we go. So this is Spectrum milk and cream. So the liquid yeast compound is high in vitamin B, absolutely fantastic, natural product, 100% natural, full of prebiotics. The fish love it. You can put it in your paste mix, you can put it in your boilie mix. It's very versatile. And so here it is. It's very dark. It's very salty. Fish love it. I don't use many liquid foods, but that would be my go-to favourite. I'm not going to open this shrimp one because it will spoil the packaging, but this is pretty unique stuff, originally sourced by a friend of mine, Malcolm Berry, my chemist friend from the Far East. Brilliant stuff, different to everybody else's. We like being different. So the shrimp, good liquid food for a very light glaze over boilies, a light glaze. And this little beauty, which is about the only specialist liquid food I do, which is Spectrum, it's white. And I'm going to tip my glass of water into the beaker. Look how it goes. You can put this in a PVA bag and it sticks round the bottom of the lake bed. It's an amazing additive. Can you see it on the bottom? Now can you see it going into a cloud? So it turns the water all milky white. Not supposed to stir with a fork. My mother used to say, stir with a fork and people talk. There we go. All milky white. And it's the most gorgeous taste as well. All natural sugars. And that is, it's actually got a little bit of Milky One and cream caramel flavour in. It's absolutely delicious. So that's about it. You'll wonder why I've got this on the table. So it's a bit of an afterthought. This is a mayonnaise pot. I've taken the label off, and it's got one of those squeezy nozzles on the front. You know, you can see it when you squeeze it. So I've washed it out in boiling water and cleaned it out. And if you want to make your own squirty dips and glugs out of any of your favourite additives, wash out and keep your old mayonnaise pots or chili sauce pots. They don't leak, they're really, really good. You can chuck them in your bag, shake it all up. You can see what the inside is like, you know, whether you need to top it up or make it again. Try that, it's a good little tactic. You can use it at the lake. Just take the additives in there and then dilute it in a bit of lake water or make it up at home to be more accurate. DIY bait making, I love it. There's always something new to do. So this second clip's been quite long. I've included quite a few things in it. Thanks for bearing with me. I know I haven't done a clip for a while. There's no point me keep producing clips every month because that'd be boring, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be unusual, it wouldn't be different, and I need to be motivated as well. So thanks for supporting me. I'm sorry about some of the posts that's been very slow this last couple of months, but we have had a postal strike. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the UK at the moment, so hopefully that will change. And watch this space. There's a few very new and interesting things going to happen in 23, but I'll tell you more about that later. Subscribe if you like it and comment if you like it. See you next time. Bye.